Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Richie Rich is an animated television series produced by Hanna-Barbera that aired on the ABC network from 1980 to 1984. The show first aired as the Richie Rich Scooby-Doo Show from 1980 to 1981, then as the Pac-Man Little Rascals Richie Rich Show from 1982 to 1983, and finally as the Monchhichis Little Rascals Richie Rich Show from 1983 to 1984. By 1988, Richie Rich was still airing in reruns alongside the live-action Down and Dirty Dinosaurs as part of the programming block titled The Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera.
I always wear my longest strand of pearls when I go through this tough section of town, Richie.
Why, Mom? Huh?
Stick 'em up.
Oh!
I'll take them
You
poils.
broke the string!
Ha!
Ah!
Hey, I'm slipping. Oh!
That's why I wear those pearls. The same thing has happened before.
You sure are a crime fighter.
Regina Rich superior, Martha Wayne inferior.
Considered to be created by Alfred Harvey, Sid Jacobson, and Warren Kramer for Harvey Comics, Richie Rich makes his first appearance alongside his mother, Mrs. Regina Rich, inside the pages of Little Dot issue number 1, inside the story titled Dancing Lesson by the year 1953. Richie Rich continued to serve as the backup feature in the pages of Little Dot, a little girl with a polka dot obsession, but soon enough, the poor little rich boy spun off into his very own comic book series by the year 1960. While Little Dot and Richie Rich would serve as one another's backup strips in their own solo titles, they can also be seen officially meeting for playdates within the pages of Richie Rich and Dot issue number 1 by the year 1974. And is it just me, or did Little Dot grow up to be Dawn Greenfield from The Silver Surfer?
To me, my board!
Richie Rich quickly became Harvey Comics' headlining character, teaming up with any Harvey Comics character that had dangerously floundering sales. Also, if you think Batman or Wolverine appear in too many comic books, well, over 50 Richie Rich titles were published by Harvey Comics from 1960 to 1994, more than any other comic character in the history of comics.
Hey, you might want to put on a helmet so it don't make a mess when I blow your mind.
Sparky Marcus, a prolific child actor, provided the vocal talents for the title character in the first 2 seasons of the show. While Richie Rich is likely his most famous role, you may also recognize his voice as the human character Nick Burns for Hanna-Barbera's GoBots.
What can I say? It's true.
Did I hear someone mention my name?
As he entered puberty, Marcus could not consistently provide the same voice he had used for Richie Rich in the early seasons, so fellow cast members were used as pinch hitters when needed.
Ooh, my goodness, Richie, do you really get this much allowance a week? Oh no, this is just today.
The episodes can be broken down into 4 different segments. Richie Rich Riches, which lasts about 7 minutes or so in length, and usually involves Richie or his supporting cast facing obstacles or threats to their person. Often, Richie Rich would foil robbery attempts from a variety of thugs and crooks on the Rich estate. The comic book counterpart, Richie Rich Riches, premiered in the year 1972 and ran for a total of 59 issues. Richie Rich Treasure Chest, which were around 3 to 4 minutes in length, would see focus on the supporting cast and extended relatives of the Rich family. The title for this segment more than likely originated from the 1977 Tempo book paperback release, and it was later used in a series of 1982 digests titled Richie Rich Treasure Chest Digest. Richie Rich Zillion Dollar Adventures were the longest of the 4 segments, around 11 minutes in length, and typically dealt with world-shattering events. More than likely capitalizing on their young male demographic who enjoyed The Super Friends or Johnny Quest, the Zillion Dollar Adventures were jam-packed with high-octane action and excitement. Richie Rich and his friends often fought off literal supervillains week after week, and in some cases, Richie Rich would use his very own spaceship to prevent alien invasions.
Richie!
The shortest of the 4 segments, called Richie Rich Gems, were typically 30 seconds or so in length. The title of the segment actually comes from one of Richie Rich's many comic book series, titled Richie Rich Gems, whose first issue premiered by the year 1974. These were exclusively focused on humor, with a brief setup and a strong punchline by the end of the bit. Reminiscent of the Thunderbolt Theater or Betty's Diary segments on Filmation's Archie's Funhouse, the Gem segments usually appeared once or twice within a single episode, and in some cases came directly from short 1 or 2 page gags within the comic books themselves. For example, the Gem segment titled Robot Bug Guards from Season 3 was adapted from a 1-page short story in the comic book Richie Rich and Gloria issue number 22 from the year 1981.
Who's that, Foy?
A guard. This rich place has lots of guards.
Let's get out of here. Hey, look! They're eating outdoors!
Come on, let's get some. This is great. Hey, what's that coming our way? Let's split. They even have robot bug guards.
However, by the 4th and final season, the Gem segments were completely dropped from the format of the show. In fact, by season 4, only the Zillion Dollar Adventure segments were produced for the show.
We give up. A zillionaire kid is too much for 2-bit crooks.
The Richie Rich cartoon has a lot of great supporting cast members that came from the Harvey comic book series. A boy's best friend is his dog, and Dollar the dog is certainly no exception. Dollar, following Richie Rich to school in the episode titled Schoolhouse Romp, reminds me of the time my own dog, Fuzzy, followed me to elementary school and showed up in my classroom. A Dalmatian with dollar symbols in the place of spots, Dollar the dog first appears by the year 1967 inside the pages of Richie Rich Dollars and Cents, issue number 19. Dollar is a steadfast and loyal companion to Richie Rich, whose heart, at least, is always in the right place. However, his tendency is to leap without looking. He'll step in and, without knowing all the pertinent and vital details of the situation, end up making things worse before they get better. Though you tend to love his ability to dream big, even if, generally speaking, his visualization turns out far better than his execution. Much like Donald Duck, Dollar also gets stuck with all the bad luck, but manages to endear you to him anyway.
You better put air in the tires first. This one looks pretty low.
Isn't he a show-off, Dad?
I'll say he's a natural-born clown.
Fans of the Super Friends may recognize the vocal talents of Stan Jones as Mr. Rich, as he also provided the vocals for Superman's arch-nemesis, Lex Luthor. Richie Rich's dad makes his first appearance inside the pages of Little Dot issue number 3 by the year 1953. In the comics, as well as the feature film version of Richie Rich, Mr. Rich is generally referred to by folks as Mr. Richard Rich Sr. However, on the cartoon series, we can overhear Mrs. Rich refer to Mr. Rich by the first name of George.
George, please be quiet. Richie is ill.
Great Scott! Now I've got the $1 million measles. I can't understand what could have happened.
One note of particular interest is that in very early issues of Richie Rich, he would refer to his mother and father as Mater and Pater. Having not been raised in the United Kingdom around the mid to late 1800s, I had no clue that this was a somewhat antiquated way to refer to one's mother and father.
Hello, Mater. Hello, Pater. I shall mail this letter later.
Richie Rich's girlfriend is the precocious Gloria Glad, who makes her first appearance inside the pages of Little Dot issue number 33 by the year 1958. While I can't exactly say the same for her comic book counterpart, at least on the cartoon, Gloria genuinely seems to value Richie's friendship rather than his vast wealth.
Right after breakfast, we'll... What?
How's the soup?
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'll use the intercom. I said...
The soup. How is it?
It's great.
Gloria's voice may seem familiar to fans of the long-running show The Simpsons, as actress Nancy Cartwright provides the vocals for Richie Rich's favorite girl. Despite her role on Richie Rich preceding her role as the trouble starter Bart Simpson, I can't help but hear Bart whenever Gloria speaks on the series.
Oh gosh! Oh golly! Oh gee! What are we gonna do, Richie?
Well, you know what I think? I think Casper's the ghost of Richie Rich.
Hey, they do look alike.
I wonder how Richie died.
While Bart Simpson poses an interesting and often repeated theory, there are 45 issues of the Casper and Richie Rich comic book series that would suggest otherwise. In fact, Casper and Richie Rich first meet one another inside the pages of Casper and Richie Rich issue number 1 by the year 1974.
Sorry for scaring the wits out of you, cousin, but it's the old family curse, you know? Rich family curse? I've never heard of it.
Freckles Friendly and his little brother Pee-wee are Richie's pals from the other side of the tracks. The brothers first made their appearance inside the pages of Little Dot issue number 2 in the year 1953. Even though Freckles is probably one of Richie's best friends from the Harvey comics, he doesn't appear all that often on the Hanna-Barbera animated series. He appears in a handful of the Richie Rich Gem segments, one Richie Rich Treasure Chest segment titled Baseball Dollar, where Freckles plays baseball with Richie against robotic opponents, as well as a few of the Zillion Dollar Adventure segments. The most memorable of the Zillion Dollar Adventures featuring Freckles being Rich for a Day, where Richie attempts to give all his friends the opportunities they've only dreamed of. It's also worth mentioning that Rich for a Day is one of the few episodes that Freckles' little brother Pee-wee actually appears on.
Wow! Freckles gets to run the Rich Trust Bank for a day!
Yeah, I always figured I had the makings of a bank president.
Jackie Jokers is a child stand-up comedian who first appears in his own eponymous title by the year 1973. While Jackie's title was canceled after only 4 issues, it was replaced with the star power of Richie Rich later that year. The title Richie Rich and Jackie Jokers ran for a total of 48 issues from 1973 to 1982. Jackie Jokers first appears on the cartoon series in the Zillion Dollar Adventure episode titled The TV Phantom from the final season. Much like the comics, Jackie is a personal friend of Richie's and performs stand-up comedy on Richie Rich's television network, the Rich Broadcasting Company.
I know. The show must go on, Jackie.
And here's Jackie!
Thank you, folks. One of my best friends is here with us tonight in our audience. Richie Rich! His family has so much money, they don't have room to store it all. They have to microfilm it.
Later in the episode titled Jackie Joker's Beach Party, he is a master of ceremonies at a beach party that gave me flashbacks of MTV's The Grind with Eric from the real world.
This is The Grind at MTV's Beach House!
Ah, yes. There's no business like show business.
The black sheep of the Rich family dynasty, Reggie Van Doe, makes his first appearance within the pages of Little Dot issue number 2 by the year 1953. Reggie is constantly trying and failing to keep up with the Joneses. He'll often pit his own dogs, Houndsworth and Butch, against Dollar in various episodes, and even though Reggie is Richie's cousin, he often serves as an antagonist for Richie, playing pranks and trying to sabotage his good works.
I guess you could come, Reggie, but no pranks. Oh, sure, no pranks.
One of the multitude of Harvey comics, Richie Rich and his mean cousin Reggie, which makes its debut by the year 1979, focuses on Richie Rich and cousin Reggie. Ultimately, though, when the stakes affect both of them, Reggie will often team up with Richie for his own self-preservation, if nothing else.
Not bad, cousin. Of course, I could have handled those guys.
Richie Rich's unwanted admirer, Maida Money, makes her first appearance within the pages of Richie Rich Money World issue number 1 by the year 1972 in the story titled Richie Rich Meets Maida Money. Maida almost tricks Richie Rich into wedded quote-unquote bliss inside the pages of Richie Rich Jackpots issue number 20 by the year 1975 in the story titled Wedded Blitz. In her very first animated appearance in Season 3, Maida Money sabotages Gloria Glad so she can have Richie as her date for an upcoming reception. She even makes poor Gloria cry.
I think you better find someone with more class to take to the reception.
Gloria? Gloria, wait! Well, Dollar, I guess I'm going to the reception alone.
Not necessarily. Cunt!
Now that we've reviewed the friends and family of Richie Rich, we'll move on to the staff. Essentially, these are all the folks on the Rich family payroll, so to speak. Of course, there is Richie's steadfast butler, or gentleman's gentleman, Herbert Arthur Runcible Cadbury. Interestingly enough, Richie Rich's first butler in the comics went by the name of Hawkins within the pages of Richie Rich issue number 1 in the year 1960. In Richie Rich issue number 3, the family butler's name was Jarvis, so I imagine old Jarvis was referred to the Starks later on.
I imagine that's quite believable.
You have no idea.
By 1961, inside the pages of Richie Rich issue number 5, there are whole armies of butlers along with other house staff that attend to the Rich household, which probably accounts for all the differently named butlers from issue to issue. Even though one of these butlers is named Hoskins, this is also the issue where we are first introduced to Cadbury. After this, from issues 6 to 8, there's a Jenkins, Jeeves, Perkins, and Harkins. However, by the time we get back to issue number 9 by the end of the year, Cadbury has once again returned as the primary butler for the Rich family. Efficient, punctual, and timely, Cadbury has the dedication of the Clock King without any of the crazy.
I beg your pardon, Master Freckles. It's time for lunch. We'll start with the salad. Would you prefer French dressing?
Bascom, Richie Rich's chauffeur, makes his first appearance within the pages of Richie Rich, issue number 12, by the year 1962.
Hey, crazy dog! Give me back my hat and my car!
The Rich family cook, Chef Pierre, is more than likely one of the unnamed cooking staff in the background of the aforementioned Richie Rich issue number 5, but he's officially called by name within Richie Rich issue number 8 by the year 1962.
Ah well, you win some, you lose some.
The cue to Richie Rich's James Bond, Professor Keenbean is an absent-minded, bumbling scientist who is responsible for just about every technological advancement at the Rich family's disposal. From Richie's two-way wrist radio, buzzsaw bow ties, and mini belt-buckle robots, Keenbean has it all. Though sometimes I wonder if he's a refugee from the 30th century.
Let's see if if you can get through the Keen Bean force field, Buster.
In addition to Reggie Van Doe pulling a Brainiac 5 with one of Keen Bean's inventions, there's also the matter of Keen Bean having developed a working time machine.
You name it. Well, you got it, Richie.
Thanks, Professor Keen Bean.
Although his character design is quite different from the show, Professor Keen Bean makes his first appearance on the cover of Richie Rich, issue 134, by the year 1975. A few months later, inside the pages of Richie Rich, issue 137, Keen Bean's facial features and hair would change and are more reminiscent of his design on the show. By Richie Rich 163, from the year 1977, we can see Keen Bean has taken up wearing your standard mad scientist smock. And by Richie Rich issue 168 from the following year, we can see Professor Keen Bean finally settle into the design that is most akin to his look on the cartoon series. Keen Bean would also make frequent appearances in the title Richie Rich Inventions during the same time frame. Professor Keen Bean was the first in a series of rotating co-stars to join the poor little rich boy in Richie Rich and insert co-star here comic book from the year 1987. By the year 1990, Richie Rich and Professor Keen Bean would have their very own title, which only seems to have lasted a total of 2 issues. If I had to speculate, my guess would be that the Marvin and Wendy era Super Friends probably stopped Keen Bean, along with a large number of other absent-minded, well-meaning professors, from nearly destroying the world at some point. Then the Riches took pity on him and hired him onto the staff, and then he wormed his way into the 30th century time machine technology. Either way, Professor Keen Bean is clearly stealing from both the Legion of Superheroes and even Superman himself.
Just one of the Supermobile's many features.
One of Keen Bean's greatest creations, according to the cartoon, is Irona, the robot maid. However, it's worth noting that Irona's first appearance inside the pages of Richie Rich issue 100 predates the first appearance of Professor Keen Bean by about 5 years. However, Irona didn't start out with the familiar character design from the cartoon right away. She's pretty much naked and looks like something straight out of Magnus Robot Fighter. Speaking of Magnus, I think a battle between him and Irona would be pretty epic, so I commissioned my good buddy Luke Dobb of Dobb Creative to bring that vision to life. The superhero comparisons don't stop there, since in the episode titled The Snowbounders, we can see Irona encased in a block of ice just like Captain America. In the episode titled Kerwash, Irona uses X-ray vision, and in the episode titled The Rare Scare, she's more powerful than a locomotive, if you know what I mean.
Irona to the rescue! Go, baby!
Oh my gosh, Irona's as strong as 100 superheroes.
You ain't seen nothing yet. Full speed ahead!
In the Zillion Dollar Adventure segment titled Disaster Master, Irona even transforms into a half-rocket like Hordak to save Richie from an oncoming tornado and then boxes the tornado away. By issue 103, in the story titled Maid of Iron from the year 1970, Irona is still without her maid garb, but gets the more full head of red hair that we're accustomed to. This go-round, the colorist gives her metallic body a gold C-3PO sheen rather than that of iron or silver. By issue 104 from the year 1971, in the story titled The Rude Robot, Irona finally gets some clothes, but her maid outfit is more of a midnight blue color without the white apron. A few issues later, a single-page story in issue 106 colors Irona's maid outfit red for reasons that escape me. But by the first issue of Richie Rich Riches from the year 1972, we would finally see the look we know and love appear. The black maid attire with the white apron is the character design that would be used in the cartoon and continued to appear in the ongoing Richie Rich comic book from issue 116 onward. By the time Hanna-Barbera's animated animated series was on the air in 1981, Harvey comic book Richie Rich Inventions, issue number 20, would tout that Richie Rich's bodyguard and housekeeper was Irona, the super robot, TV's newest star. In keeping up with her duties as both maid and protector, Irona also possessed the ability on the animated series to modify her robot appendages into cleaning tools like vacuums, and her lower half could turn into construction vehicles or snowplows.
But I think there's more here than meets the eye.
More than meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons, the Transformers. The Transformers. More than meets the eye. The Transformers.
It's a Transformer!
Irona's boyfriend, Suavo, is later introduced by the third season of the cartoon. Much like his first appearance inside the pages of Richie Rich, issue 210, by the year 1981, Suavo originally serves as a romantic distraction for Irona. All the while, some crooks named Lance and Arthur intend to rob the Rich family fortune right under her nose. The animated episode, titled Suavo, is an adaptation of the comic book story, where the title character has a literal change of heart and decides to go straight. Suavo's attempts to seduce Irona backfire on the crooks, as he instead turns a new leaf and stops them out of his genuine feelings of love toward Irona. By season 4, as the kids say, Suavo is even ready to put a ring on it.
Oh, Mr. Suavo.
Suave. Interestingly enough, Irona has had a few live-action interpretations. One in the Saban Entertainment-produced direct-to-video film Richie Rich's Christmas Wish from the year 1998. While it is somewhat faithful to Irona's comic book and cartoon appearance, the budget of the film is on par with atrocities like Ninja Turtles' Next Mutation, and certainly leaves something to be desired. There's also the Irona from the Netflix original Richie Rich series released in 2015.
Hello, what have we here?
The majority of standout episodes usually came from the Zillion Dollar Adventure segments. In the episode The Great Charity Train Robbery, for example, it was kind of like Richie Rich meets Westworld. An evil version of Filmation's Brave Star called Bronco Bart is a cowboy crook that turns the Wild West theme park full of automated robots against Richie Rich.
Okay, Richie Rich, this time you're done for.
Richie of the Round Table tends to remind me of the season 3 episode of Transformers called Madman's Paradise. While Daniel and Grimlock travel through a dimensional portal to fight the nefarious Red the Wizard, Richie Rich uses Professor Keenbean's time machine to journey to the time of Arthurian legend in order to take on the evil wizard Morecash.
Too late! You're all trapped here forever!
On the episode titled King Bee, the titular villain of the piece looks like Buzz-Off from the Masters of the Universe and answers age-old questions we never thought to ask, such as, can a 12-year-old fly a plane? To which the answer is apparently yes, because, shattering my best efforts to suspend my disbelief, the episode features Richie Rich piloting his own plane. I guess FFA rules don't apply to Richie motherfucking Rich, do they?
And I guess what I want my dog. Go pet it. Go pet the dog!
One of the most prolific villains of the show is called the Collector and appears a total of 3 times throughout the course of the series. The Collector appears to be either an evil version of Orson Welles or maybe Raymond Burr of that particular era, whose collection has turned into an unhealthy obsession with kidnapping.
Who are you?
They call me the Collector. First I collected butterflies, then stamps, coins. I collected everything until there was nothing left to collect except people!
Finally, one of the best Zillion Dollar adventures is titled Richie Hood, where Richie uses the Keen Bean time machine and manages to have an epic team-up with none other than Robin Hood of Sherwood Forest.
How about if we handle this thing together, Robin?
I am honored, Sir Richie.
As much as the Richie Rich Robin Hood crossover tickles me pink, it's nowhere near as outrageous as that time that Harvey Comics wrote a 3-issue miniseries pairing Richie Rich with none other than the New Kids on the Block. I'm genuinely surprised and quite pleased at how much I enjoyed revisiting the Hanna-Barbera Richie Rich cartoon. Even though it has been quite some time since I've seen the show on my earliest childhood Saturday morning cartoon jaunts, the series exceeds at trying to please all of the people all of the time. There's a great deal of variety, which means that there's something for everyone in nearly every episode. From humorous gags to hair-raising Johnny Quest-style high adventure, this show really has it all.
That's right. I shit gold bricks.
Please, it's quite all right, sir.
Shush. I'm gonna get your tip.
Just one of the Supermobile's many features.